I've been using the term context appropriateness for a lot of things. So I'm happy to talk about what it means in general, but I think it's important that we start there with people so they understand what we're talking about when we say context appropriateness,
Mhm.
when we are talking about addressing white supremacy culture. And I know for me, when I say context appropriateness, I mean that there are people that are learning a lot of things. And I I put a lot of stuff under a DEI umbrella, and that there's so much work that goes under it, and I'm not saying something's better than the other. I'm just saying when I say DEI, I know it means a lot of things. It can mean white supremacy culture, it can mean other things. What people are learning is information, and then they kind of like categorize it as like good or bad, and then if it's bad, you just are never supposed to do it again, or you're supposed to do something all the time. And what's missing is the context appropriateness, which is understanding what you're learning so well that you know how to use it, when to use it, what parts make sense in these situations, what parts make sense in others. That's missing right now. So when I think about context appropriateness for white supremacy culture, I feel like it's the same thing. People are learning a lot of stuff, and it feels like it's either this or that. And I that's my thought on it, and I'm curious to know what it means for you.
Mhm. Yeah, so I think just to start off, like when we're talking about white supremacy culture, I think maybe we should spend a moment on that before
Mm,
we get into context appropriateness. So, what we're talking about is basically when the attitudes, beliefs, actions, and behaviors of white people are basically codified into a culture. And we see that inside our organizations and workplace. So, it can be as large as the number of hours you're expected to work in this 5-day work week, 40-hour plus week, down to even the details of what you wear to work, what the tone in which you speak, the words you use, how you respond to something. It really permeates sort of every aspect, I think, of our work culture. So when we're talking about white supremacy culture and really trying to deconstruct it, we're trying to look at the ways in which we have just sort of adopted unwittingly the customs and culture of white America into our everyday lives. And so, yeah, I think this is something that has come more into our consciousness or into mainstream consciousness in the last few years, largely driven, I think, by that very impactful article by Tema Okun and all the work on dismantling racism. And I find them to be tremendously helpful tools in identifying things at work or within work structure that can be very oppressive and can help and can tend to replicate the very same oppressive structures that we're trying to fight outside of our organization. So it can be very, very helpful. But what I think we're finding is sometimes there's rigidity in the application of the principles. They're new and we're learning it. We're talking about it. And I'm not also holding myself out as an expert on this either, but this is something that I've studied over the past several years and have been very interested in becoming more aware of so that I can try to deconstruct it within my own practice, within my own team and the work environment that I'm creating around me. So that's what we're talking about. I'm even a little taken aback, to be honest, by the word appropriateness, because to me, that's one of those words like, well, where is that? What is appropriate, right? And whose measure or opinion are we using to describe what's appropriate and what's not appropriate? You can fall into the same trap here. But something that you and I have talked about is that one of the characteristics of white supremacy culture in the workplace can be, what is it? Being wed to the written word. So basically, this is what it says. This is the policy. I'm going to apply this policy in every circumstance without any regard for, as I think you're saying, context or specifics, right? The situation. And so we are seeing that in this realm of people taking these characteristics of white supremacy culture and applying them. And sometimes in situations where I don't think they should be applied. So sometimes we're seeing people take those principles of white supremacy culture and just weaponize them against the same people that they're supposed to be trying to not necessarily protect, but shine a light on. So, like weaponizing these DEI tools against communities of color or people of color, and also just applying these principles without much regard for the context or the specifics surrounding the situation.